breaking the stronghold of alcohol, finding time for friends, and getting honest with yourself. We're going there today in this second part of the conversation with Tommy Oesch from Swiss Lane Farms on the Up-Level Dairy Podcast for dairy farm owners, managers, and advisors committed to profitability, sustainability, and excellence. My name is Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will up-level your skill set and your mindset so you can be a top performer in the dairy business. So we've been talking with Tommy about his 5 buckets of priorities, and you heard about 3 of them in episode 53. Tommy talked about family, the role that he looks at as a father and a husband. He talked about his faith and why his weekly men's discipleship group is a non-negotiable in his schedule. And we talked about the farm, the business, the dairy, how he and his partners have committed to the vision of 7,000 cows in 7 years. And today we're dipping into his other 2 buckets. Health, as in physical and mental health, how the 75 Hard Challenge changed his life, including his relationship with alcohol. And friendships, why it doesn't get easier as life gets busier and how he commits to investing in this circle. And how does he find the balance between these 5 buckets and some accountability? Well, you're going to hear about that too. This episode is sponsored by Affy Milk, a global dairy technology company that designs herd management software and products that allow thousands of cows to be managed on an individual level. Affy Milk can tell you what's happening with your cows and your milk, alerts you if there's a problem, and pinpoints the problem so it can be managed quicker and easier. And get ready, friends, to get real with Tommy Oesch today. We talk about prioritizing your faith, right? Prioritizing the business, your role as a dad and as a husband, the family piece. But then there's this piece that is about taking care of you physically, and physically also is mentally too. Those 2 are connected, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about health, and feel free to go off in both of those directions of the
Sure.
physical and the mental health and how those things come together for you.
There's days this is maybe the easiest bucket to fill because I enjoy it so much, but that's not true always, especially the older I get and the harder it is. There's days that I just look at my shoes and think, man, if they would just put themselves on my feet, then we'd be all set, right? Well, I know my brain doesn't work very well if I'm not feeling physically fit, if you will. And fit's maybe a strong word, but physically well. And for me, that is, I know that I have to get in 3 workouts a week or things aren't going to be working right, like mentally and emotionally for me. I just feel like there's so much power in that physical activity, so many endorphins that are released, and so like the mental clarity that you get from working out, that I wouldn't want to try to do any of the rest of the stuff if I wasn't investing in time in that. And it's hard, right? With this stage with kids and, you know, like I talked about, we both work and my wife feels the same way. So we both have to carve out time, you know, so how do we both fit in 3 workouts a week and get the kids fed and to all their stuff and supported? It can be an easy one to just say, well, I just don't have time. And so that's one of those areas I'm always looking for a better mousetrap there, right? Like I wish there was a way. And especially this time of year, this is my favorite time of year to go out and run, right? It's cool, but the days are so stinking short, right? It's dark until 7:30 in the morning, and it's dark. It's getting dark earlier and earlier. So finding that time, we were part of a boot camp gym. And then in the last year, join the YMCA, and I prefer going someplace. I'll go to a gym and like get overwhelmed by the weight machine. So I'll just get on the treadmill and run. Right. So I do like structured classes where you go and they tell you what to do for half an hour, 45 minutes. You get a good workout in and you're back home. But I don't think it matters what you do, but that is just a powerful piece of our life that we feel strongly we have to keep in order.
So have you always been a workout person, or is this something that you learned probably the hard way, like most of us, that you needed to prioritize?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I look at pictures of like, I can't remember 15 years ago. And I'm like, who is that out of shape guy? Right. Like, and I remember feeling it, you know, and struggling probably at times with like emotions and and just feeling like it's in insecurity, right? If you let yourself go, like it's obviously going to create insecurity. So there's a piece of that as a person in a leadership role. I think you have to invest in that, at least something, if you want to maintain peak horsepower, not just physical horsepower, but like ability to get things done in your life. It's amazing if you get up early, and you know this as good as anybody. You get up early and go for a run, you have more energy after the run than you would have had you slept another hour. And the lie is that you won't.
Hey, and I know, Tommy, that you have done what some might consider some extreme things to be able to really achieve the level of, physical and mental sharpness that you've wanted. And one of them is the 75 hard. So for someone that doesn't know what that is, tell us about it and why on earth you decided to do it.
I got to give credit to a couple guys that I saw that the results of them doing it. I was like, that's impressive. And so 75 hard it's 75 days. You have to stick to a diet. Doesn't matter what diet. You can look all this stuff up. If you look up 75 hard, there's lots of you can find it anywhere. Like it'll tell you the few rules of 75 hard, but you have to stick to a diet. I did intermittent fasting for 75 days. You have to drink a gallon of water every day. You have to read 10 pages of nonfiction every day, 2 45-minute workouts. One's got to be outdoors and no alcohol. So there's those things. And the other thing that you'll find is you're supposed to take a progress picture every day. That might have been the one thing that I was a little bit lax on. All the rest of those things. And I have to, I did it with about 10 of my friends last January. We started January 2nd. And when I brought it up, they all were like, that's stupid. We're not doing that. And all of them made it all 75 days and had phenomenal results. All felt more disciplined, all felt more in control. And I will tell you, like, our kids were doing sports and all that during that time. And we were able to carve out the time we needed to do 2 45-minute workouts a day, do all of the stuff. But it's interesting. We got done on St. Patty's Day, had a great St. Patty's Day cookout and celebration. And we're all like, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Guess what? We're all doing it again. And everybody's looking forward to it.
Yeah. So you've got a crew and you guys are going to start January of 2024?
Yep. Everybody that said never again is all looking forward to it because I think we crave that discipline in our life.
So you mentioned results that the other guys, in the group had results that they were really happy about. But for you, what was your biggest takeaway? Like, what was your biggest win from doing 75 days of twice a day workouts, 10 pages of nonfiction reading, following your intermittent fasting diet, no alcohol? What was your biggest win?
Probably in total transparency, the taking control of alcohol, I think, is like in our world, like that thing. There's a itch that alcohol scratches for leaders that soothes anxiety that is pretty powerful and pretty dangerous. And so I was really happy with that reset and looking forward to that again. Honestly, I know that's this moment of total vulnerability. It's a temptation that's, if I'm not careful, had some pretty devastating effects in my life.
So of all the boxes to check for 75 hard and what it takes, was that the hardest one in the beginning?
Ooh, I don't know. It was pretty hard. It was pretty hard because you do a lot of socializing, and once you committed to it, it was fine. But yeah, it was pretty hard at the beginning, if I'm honest. I bought 75 gallons of water, individual gallons of water, and lined them up in my living room, labeled them 1 to 75.
Can we talk about the alcohol thing a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're very vulnerable and saying that, that was something that really came to the surface for you with 75 hard, was that piece of let's call it a coping mechanism. And it's not just you, it's a lot of people, right? Like it's so many people. Did you feel like that was a stronghold that you were aware that you had and that you wanted to break free from?
I was kind of the ringleader in getting us to do this deal, right? I think for me, that might have been psychologically, I mean, not might have been, it was one of the strongest pulls for me to do that particular program was that I, I wasn't comfortable with my relationship with alcohol, and if I'm honest. And so it certainly was a big reason why that was the challenge I chose to take on and make all my friends do with me. And if I'm honest, I was hopeful that they would because I knew it would be hard if they didn't, right?
So did some of the other people that participated, did they walk away with a similar takeaway?
Well, I think we all did, right? I think, well, not all. I don't want to put that on all of them, but yes, I think there was lots of conversations, we'd get together and play cards and bring our bubblies. And so often we'd have beers while playing cards and you got to change the narrative, change the atmosphere. And it was great, but yeah, it was interesting.
That was a really powerful experience. So go back to all of your buckets. How has it made you better in every other area by prioritizing your health and doing things that keep your body strong and your mind sharp?
Well, it just gives me the energy to do everything else, right? I mean, when you're feeling sluggish, it's hard to get the things done you want to get done. It's hard enough to get the things done I want to get done, fully energized, right? So it just, I know if I wasn't having a commitment to physical fitness, that I would not have the capacity to get nearly the things done that I want to achieve.
So the time investment in taking care of that bucket has benefits that spill over into the other buckets.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And now, how does this line up with your core values at Swiss Lane?
So it lines up pretty well. Our core values are God honoring conduct, making hay while the sun shines, focused on the cows, light years ahead, becoming productive people and turning a nickel into a dime. I can make a case that aligns up with almost all of them, but certainly becoming productive people is a huge deal. Always learning, always growing, always moving. Those are things that we have posted around our business and
Yeah.
lines up very well.
All these things come full circle, Tommy. And we talked about business, family, spiritual, the physical, and the mental health. But there's one more that can be really easy to neglect, and that's the bucket of relationships, as in friendships. So,
Yeah.
what does that bucket mean to you?
Oh, it means a lot. My friends are really important to me and I invest a lot in them. Hard to put yourself out there today. There's a lot of people walking around, I think, without a lot of friends because they're afraid to put themselves out there and ask, hey, do you want to hang out? And there's nights I might text our friend group and nobody can make it. And maybe you don't even hear from half of them. Or you might text somebody and they don't even text you back. We're all afraid of that rejection of no, I don't want to hang out with. Do you want to hang out? No. Like we don't want that to happen.
Right. You think they're saying no to you, but really they're saying yes to a different priority, right?
Absolutely. And so it is. I think it's a big lie that we tell ourselves that people say no, then they don't like me. And there's always a fear of putting yourself out there. And it's awesome when, you get 3, 4, 5 couples that are all like the stars align and you can all hang out, but like somebody's got to be driving that ship, right? And thankfully there's a couple of us in our friend group that are driving that are willing to reach out, willing to ask. And so, yeah, it's something that it takes energy. It takes emotional and
It sure does. And it's easy to overlook when you're busy being busy because you
busy.
don't have time, right?
Yeah.
When I think about that bigger picture of friendships, and this is where I personally struggle too, right? Because you're busy doing all the things, don't have time. But one of the biggest awakening things for my husband and I in our world is there's some older couples that we know, and one in particular, friends of ours that just had their parents that have the most dynamic social life at 80 years old. It's a husband and wife, and they have this little group that they go around with, and they just have the best time. And they have that because they have been friends since they were in their 20s and 30s raising kids together, and now they're literally in their 70s and 80s.
That's awesome.
And that's what they do. One of those moments of reflection where it's like, "Ooh, how are we investing in our 80-year-old friendships today?"
Right. Yep. Friendship can be a funny thing, right? You hang out with somebody long enough, you better hope that they're willing to forgive you, and
Mm.
you better be willing to forgive them for some
Ooh,
things, because nobody's gonna make you happy all the time, if you will. That's why some people avoid conversations. They're afraid of what they're gonna say and worried that people won't forgive them for their social faux pas, if you will. And I review a lot of conversations in my head. And I'm like, oh, thankfully I've got a bunch of really good friends that are willing to forgive me for this stupid stuff I say sometimes, right?
Well, but do you think there's also an element to the value of surrounding yourself with good friends because you are willing to challenge each other
Oh
and
yeah.
you are willing to say the hard things? I mean, I think about one of my good friends. Her name's Mariah. She listens to this podcast sometimes, so she laughed pretty hard. But she's one of those people in my life that she will point out the really blunt, honest, straight truth at times. And maybe it's not what I want to hear, but it's probably what I need to hear.
Yep.
And I value her more in my life because she cares about me enough to say it. And I think that's a whole different thing, when you are at the level in your friendships where you truly just care about each other enough to say the hard things, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to know the heart of the person, right? Don't trust the heart. Then those words, are more hurtful.
I think every aspect of these buckets that we've talked about today, Tommy, they all interconnect. The business, the family, the spiritual, the health, the friendships. And to take a couple of steps back and to look at these buckets and say, okay, so you are a dairyman, a business owner, or a dad, have all these roles, you have all of these buckets. How do you prioritize? How do you set your, kind of your minimum checkpoints for, now, this is what I need to make sure that I do in a week to be able to lay your head on the pillow on Sunday night and feel like you were successful in filling your buckets?
Oh, that's a good question. The workout one's the easiest. If I can get 3 in, I'm satisfied. 4 or 5 is better, but I know if I get 3 in, that's really easy. That's a really easy checkpoint. The family one is a little bit tough. How do you know that your family bucket is full? Well, I think it's pretty easy to know where your marriage stands most of the time. If that thing feels like it's off the rails, that's like when as somebody that's been married for quite some time too, you just know when you're not in sync with your partner or in sync with your kids. That's something that just takes some feel, I think. You have to care.
Yeah.
You don't care, you're not gonna know. And there's times just things seem to head off the rails. My wife and one of us will grab the other one, get a moment of just freeness and be like, hey, we have a good life. We have a really good life. And like over the
Mhm.
last couple of years, that's been something that's been pretty powerful to both of us is like, okay, yes, check yourself. Like we have so much great going on. Oh, but then in my business, scorecard makes it pretty easy. That
Yeah.
scorecard is all going the right way. Especially when there's money in the checkbook, that really helps there. And also like, is our foot on the gas or are we just complacent? Are we pushing to do more and be better, or are we just showing up? Right.
So you have some things that are really easy to measure and some things that are standing commitments. So you talk about your business meetings. Those are standing commitments and it's
Yep.
very clear expectations, very clear formatting. You have, your faith, which is prioritized through your discipleship group, standing meeting,
Yep.
clear formatting, clear expectations.
Also, church attendant and getting our kids to, because now it's not just Annie and I going to church it's getting our kids, and those are different times of the week. So there's standing appointments there that must be made.
So what do they say? You don't prioritize you schedule your priority. And so you have those things that are built in. And then some of these other pieces, you have a minimum standard in your mind, but you can flex them. So
Yep.
that workout bucket for your health,
Yep.
you need 3 workouts, but you can flex that to make it happen and to fit it in. And it doesn't always mean you're going to get in that run at your favorite time of the day. Sometimes it means you're running in the afternoon, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's been
Mhm.
interesting. You get feedback, especially in a small town, when you're Mr. Dairy Farmer and you're out for a run at 2 p.m. and the neighbors are like, oh, it must be nice to be a farmer and just go out running whenever you want. It's like, oh, no, you don't know what I had to work around to get that 2 p.m. running, right? So, but you don't have
Right?
to, you don't need to explain that, right? So,
Yeah, well, but I think it comes back to whole bigger picture of this entire conversation, Tommy, and what that is that the way that you look at these buckets in your life and the priorities, that you have in your schedule and the life that you're creating so that you can live the life that you want now, like it's different than the traditional mindset and stereotype of a dairy farmer that comes to some people's mind. It might be different than someone who's listening to this podcast saying this is totally different than how they operate in their work life and personal life. And so, how do you respond to the way that you look at your buckets and how they are different than maybe your dad's bucket or your neighbor's bucket or other people in the business?
yeah, I think that maybe is one of the things that takes the most confidence. I feel like if those buckets are full, I'm the only one that knows that. And I don't really need to explain how full my buckets are, my business, I don't really need to explain that to anybody. You know what I mean? And some people kind of might demand it in conversation, but they want to know why you're spending so much time doing this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, you know what? I don't need to be defined by what other people, I'm not living their life. I'm not asking them to live
That's
mine.
right.
So this is the one I'm thinking.
So tell me this then. What would be your advice to 35-year-old Tommy? Because you're what? You're in your early 40s now,
Yeah.
right? And so you're speaking from a place of some life and wisdom and being able to, just grow in all of these areas. But if we were to go back to say like 30 to 35-year-old Tommy, what would you tell him?
I would say listen to good advice and don't get your feelings hurt.
And where do you find that good advice?
Well, your marriage, it is in your partnerships in your business. It's in a discipleship group. It's in your friendships. All those places have that advice if you're looking for it.
So you look for the people that are living the type of life you want to live?
Yeah, absolutely. Or at least bring them along for the ride.
Well, we've covered a lot here, but parting thoughts, final thoughts.
I guess my biggest thought is I just don't want to pretend that I have it all figured out. I'm learning as I go. Also, my biggest fear is that somebody listens and thinks that I think that I have all the answers, right? I'm still searching too. I'm just really grateful that you wanted to chat with me. I really hope that something I said is helpful to somebody.
I hope so too. And I think the things that we've talked about today, they go way beyond what happens in the barn. And this is about life. This is about the bigger picture. This is about the bigger purpose. And those are the buckets. If one bucket is really full and overflowing, those other ones get real empty real
Yeah,
fast.
real empty, real fast. Yep.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Tommy. Well, you were our number 1 episode for season 1 of the Uplevel Dairy podcast. So it's awesome to have you back on to share some wisdom about all of the behind the scenes of the 7,000 cows in 7 years vision, to get to really know you and how your mind works, how you operate, and this bigger picture of what life looks like and what living life looks like for you.
Well, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
So to wrap up this two-part conversation, friends, we've had a real raw conversation about balancing these 5 buckets: family and faith, the farming business, health, friendships, and getting honest with ourselves about how we're really doing at keeping each bucket full. And here's a couple of phrases that really stuck with me from these conversations with Tommy, and they might be ones that you want to take home too. The first one is this: when you say, "I don't have time," it's become Tommy's check yourself phrase, because "I don't have time" is the same as saying, "I don't want to." So what are you saying you don't have time for? And the next one is this: if you keep your house in order, you can do anything you want. That means putting family first, relationships with your spouse and kids, a relationship with Christ. And that's what Tommy says is a strength and a horsepower that's essential for leaders and essential for business. And Tommy will be the first to say he's not perfect, and these buckets aren't about perfection. The power of the buckets is in intention, having awareness, making efforts, and holding himself accountable to what he needs to be to operate at his highest level for himself. But by doing that, he's at his best for those around him. Thanks for listening to the Up-Level Dairy Podcast. Head back to episode 53 for part 1 of this series, and scroll all the way down to episode 35 to hear our #1 episode from season 1 of Up-Level Dairy, as Tommy talks about the 7,000 cows in 7 years vision for Swiss Lane Farms. And if you like this episode, share it with a friend. Better yet, leave a review and then head over to upleveldairy.com to subscribe to the Up-Level Dairy community and receive new episodes each week right in your inbox. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and thanks for listening to the Up-Level Dairy Podcast.